It's time for another episode of Let's Talk Business South Carolina, featuring industry outlooks, panel discussions on trending topics, and interviews with business executives, community leaders, and government officials. And now, coming to you from the Drum Creative Studio, here's your host, longtime South Carolina business publisher, Rick Jenkins.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Business South Carolina, coming to you from the Drum Creative Studios. I'm your host, Rick Jenkins. In this episode, we will be presenting the 2024 South Carolina Aerospace Outlook, brought to you by the South Carolina Council on Competitiveness, or SC Competes. There are two first occurrences for today's show. One, the Aerospace Outlook will actually be presented over the course of two episodes. There's just too much great info to share for us to squeeze it all into one show. And second, for the very first time, I actually won't be moderating the conversation. That duty will fall to someone much more qualified to lead the discussion on this topic. Stephen Astemborski, the Director of Engagement and Aerospace Initiatives for SC Competes, will lead the conversation for both episodes. As I mentioned, the 2024 Aerospace Outlook is brought to you by SC Competes. They are a statewide, business-led, nonprofit organization that works to improve the long-term competitiveness of South Carolina. Aerospace is just one of the established industry clusters they support. Another is logistics. Recently, we aired the Logistics Economic Impact Study, which was commissioned by SC Competes and presented by Dr. Joy Von Nessen, a highly renowned research economist at the Darla Moore School of Business. If you missed it, that episode is archived here on our YouTube channel. South Carolina's aerospace industry isn't just about the Boeing 787 manufactured in North Charleston or the Greenville-built F16. The industry has evolved into one of the state's most dynamic sectors, with an annual economic impact of more than $28 billion. Like I said, there's a lot to discuss. So let's get to it. We're going to take a brief 60-second break, and when we return, Stephen Astemborski will get the conversation started. We'll be right back.
Welcome to part two of our 2024 Aerospace Outlook. Again, my name is Stephen Astemborski, and I am the Director of Engagement and Aerospace Initiatives at SC Competes. And through our SC Aerospace Industry Cluster, we work to connect, support, and grow the aerospace industry throughout the state of South Carolina. In our last episode, we were joined by Dave Edwards of Greenville-Spartanburg International Airport and Steve Towns of Ranger Aerospace and ACL Airshop. And we discussed the outlook for air passenger travel and air cargo operations in 2024. But in order for those planes to move people and goods across the globe, they need to be assembled, and those parts need to be machined and processed in plants, many of which are right here in South Carolina. Today, we have two leaders of two of those plants joining us that are going to help us look forward to what we can expect in 2024. And that's Jason Marlin, President of Champion Aerospace, and Steve Prout, Southeast President of Solar Atmospheres. Gentlemen, why don't you introduce yourselves?
As Stephen said, I'm Jason Marlin. I'm the president at Champion Aerospace, which is in Liberty, South Carolina, about 8 miles from Clemson. Champion is a manufacturer of ignition systems for aircraft engines, both piston and turbine engines. We're on just about every aircraft type flying in the free world. We've been in Liberty since the 80s, and we have really deep aviation roots. We were on the Wright brothers' first powered flight in 1903, so about as deep as you can get. And again, we're on every airplane flying for the most part.
And I think the T-shirt was in a movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, Brad Pitt wore the Champion T-shirt in a movie.
Yes.
Always nice. No T-shirts in movies, but I'm Steve Prout with Solar Atmospheres. I am actually president of our Greenville facility, as well as a member of the board of directors for the solar family of companies. Solar as a company has been around. We're entering our 40th year of business, and the Greenville facility has been here for 10 years now. We're a special processor to the aerospace defense supply chain. We provide thermal processing services, so most metal component parts are going to need to be hardened or softened somewhere along the line, and that's done normally through a thermal process, and we specialize in vacuum heat treating and vacuum brazing for a lot of the high temperature materials that are involved in the aerospace manufacturing market.
Well, thank you. So, I think it's probably always best to start off with the good news. So, Jason, why don't we start with you? Where do you see the market strengths in 2024?
Yeah, I would start just by saying that really I would say the underlying markets for aerospace are all firing on all cylinders. All are in growth mode. If we break it down kind of by market segment, starting with the commercial transport segment, which would be the Boeing and Airbus, large airplanes, anything you would fly out of GSP or out of Atlanta. That market, the OEMs, the increase in production rates that they're planning for 2024 is roughly 20% over 2023, and then continued growth going forward beyond that. And the aftermarket side, so the airline element of commercial transport, they're almost back to where we were pre-COVID in terms of available seat miles of flying. I think we're roughly through October was 3% under where we were pre-COVID. That is projected to actually surpass pre-COVID levels in 2024. So good steady growth there. I think we have seen an insatiable demand for air travel. After 2 years of lockup, people really wanted to get out, visit their loved ones and friends, and really valued life experiences and willing to pay more of their disposable income for that travel than they were prior. So strong demand with most domestic air travel surpassing pre-COVID levels. International still lagging a little bit, but catching up. That's really where a lot of the tailwind will come in 2024 as more, especially in Asia, Southeast Asia, they start to catch up on the international travel side. If I break down from there to defense, the defense side, as we all know, the global threat environment is probably higher than it's been in more than 30 years. We have an active war in Europe as well as Israel, and then issues in the Red Sea, Taiwan Strait area, and the South China Sea. So there's a lot of threats out there. And with the active wars, there's a lot of replenishment of military assets and ammunition needed. I think that most European governments kind of recognize that they had the peace dividend for the last 30 years since the end of the Cold War, and they haven't invested enough in defense. So now they're kind of playing catch up of getting to the 2% GDP on defense spend and higher. So there's going to be a robust cycle of defense spending. This is not just a 1 year, 3 year. This is a 10 plus year growth mode for defense. So we're just at the beginning of that, but that will continue to ramp for a long time. Then the other elements that we track, business jets, really strong through COVID when people didn't feel safe traveling on a commercial airline. Saw huge growth, and everyone expected that to drop off kind of when people started flying commercially again, and we haven't really seen that. I think the November FAA numbers were up 0.5% over November last year, so it's kind of plateaued and pretty steady, so still a very good market. And then for us, the general aviation side's really fueled by flight schools. They fly the most flight hours, and there's a roughly 20% more people in flight school today learning to be a pilot than there was pre-COVID, and that's because of the demand in the commercial airline segment. A lot of those pilots retired at COVID, and they need to replenish the pilots out there. So a lot of programs to incentivize people to become pilots, a lot of flight hours on GA aircraft in the training mode. So all of those elements are in growth mode for 2024, so it should be a huge year for aerospace suppliers.
That's good. Yeah, I know Dave spoke about that GSP, they're already back to, pre-COVID numbers, which is fantastic. And, and if you kind of look at that as one of the indicators, eventually it's got to come out in the wash that we're going to need more planes, more parts, more everything to be able to fill that demand. But Steve, how about you? What do you see the strengths being kind of in your slice of the supply chain?
Like you said, it's a little bit different than Champion in that we are really focused more on original equipment, not on the MRO side of support for the aviation industry. But we also track just a few markets that are really aligned well with our value proposition. And we see the same things with commercial. All of our customers are saying that growth is back to where they're really looking, and really it's putting some strain on the supply chain. It's such such high levels. I think the main thing is that we're seeing a switch from dual aisle to single aisle. There's just a larger push for the more efficient aircraft, and the retooling has gotten a real push on the aero engine supply chain as well. And so we're seeing a lot of push in and around that growth. The defense, it really is a very interesting time for the world right now. I think, I heard one pundit mention that I think Putin is the best defense-related salesman that there is. And so a lot of countries are, again, boosting their spend as a percentage of GDP. We've seen that too. And I think that's just intriguing, right? Because that's not going to go away anytime soon. Unfortunately, I wish we didn't have those things to talk about. But from a business standpoint and the support of that, I think that is something that is allowing us to plan around how our businesses are constructed, support some of those supply chains that do support different platforms that are defense related. I would only add there's one additional industry that we track that's been a big part of our business, which is space. Mm-hmm. So there's been so many launches, and there's been such a development along the lines of United Launch and SpaceX and Blue Origin. All these companies are just launching at an incredible rate. And that's been something that we see. All of what we hear is that that's going to continue. If not, as soon as Starship finally gets its approval, there's going to be a tremendous uptick in the demand for engines and things like that that will really represent some business for the supply chain. So,
yeah, I know. Me personally, I had a meeting yesterday with a professor from the University of South Carolina asking about how we can expose some of his students to the space side of aerospace, and not something that I had really heard much in the past 3 years or so, but starting to hear a lot more now, and I think that's a very exciting opportunity in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah.
Now, so we talked about kind of what's going good, but what are the challenges out there that you think we should be looking for in 2024?
Well, I think I mentioned it a little bit, kind of in the nuance of meeting that demand that's out there. It's the supply chain is not, I think, as ready as it has been in the past. Some of that's been influenced by COVID, the adjustments that especially the commercial supply chain had to go through because planes weren't flying. So as a result, companies had to make adjustments to survive, and some of that was unfortunate layoffs, and those employees moved on. They were a skilled employee that had options. And so those employees have found new jobs, and now the supply chain is trying to retool. And so it's exposed a lot of training concerns, and really just trying to get all these businesses back online and producing all the same materials. We've seen a lot of our customers unable to get their hands on material. You see a little bit of it in the news with some of the concerns that are kind of boiling to the top between Lockheed and Howmet around titanium supply and the concerns that are there. Some of those concerns are legitimate. They're risks and strains to each company that's trying to meet these rates. And so, finding ways through those very legitimate concerns for the supply chain, I think will be a big focus for the year, as well as, we've talked for years already about workforce. And I think there's just a refocusing of workforce that we're going to have to continue to work on, for sure.
Jason, how about for Champion and kind of your slice as well?
Yeah, I think some of the challenges that Steve mentioned are the same in our manufacturing sector, and I would say it's supply chain. And for us, it's really the base materials. It's really the bar stock. If you go all the way back to the metals, those are the things that have really increased in lead times of stuff that used to be 40 weeks now, 70-week lead time. So you have to plan an extra year in advance and give your suppliers and machine shops kind of a forecast a year in advance so they could get the metals on order. Those things have changed, and I don't think that'll ever go back. I think now that that's in the system, we're always going to have to be planning ahead to kind of manage that. So the supply chain challenges, a lot of the challenges we did see in COVID have kind of subsided. The electronic component issues, that's much better. For us, it's really, I would say base materials. During COVID, we also saw the chemical side, like potting, compounds, and paints have real issues. That's mostly better for the most part. So we have the occasional supply chain issue today, but I would say it's not a lot different than it was pre-COVID. There's always going to be a supplier that has an issue. There's a lot of small businesses that support aerospace farther down the supply chain. That's where some of the bigger challenges come from. It's not necessarily, just Boeing and Airbus or just the engine guys, the tier one suppliers that have issues. It's the small mom and pop guys that when you shut off the spigot in COVID and they had to get rid of half of their workforce, they can't ramp up as quick. So the challenge on a lot of the brain drain of the folks that have 30 or 35 years experience retiring early during COVID, getting that back immediately on just the knowledge and workforce side doesn't happen overnight. So Steve's point about just the kind of onboarding and training and investing in people to get that knowledge base up is definitely critical and something we're focused on. So same basic challenges, supply chain and really the overall labor market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's interesting. It seems like there's always the same issues that just kind of pop up in different ways as we fix them. I know we've discussed before, but in my prior job before coming to SC Competes, when I worked for GE Aviation, that was my job, was to travel around to suppliers, all over the world really, and help break those constraints and get material to our plant so that we could meet our customer requirements. But I'm curious now, which do you see being the industry trend? Do you think it's to get material just in time, or is it to sit on inventory if you can so that you have it when you need it? Do you see one or the other kind of being the way forward for the near future?
I think the pendulum swung from just in time to just in case. So they wanted to stock up and have all the material you can. Now, most, at least publicly traded companies, are saying, hey, our working capital is terrible. We got to start reducing inventory. So there's risks related to that, but I think that a lot of the demand spike that created the surge, just like people buying toilet paper during COVID, was people just trying to protect the supply chain and overbuying. Yeah. And that has started to subside, and that's what's helped the supply chain start to catch up, because we had this huge slug of everyone wanting to order more and protect their business, really artificially inflating demand even higher than it should have been. And that's, for the most part, gone away. But I think most businesses will get back to managing their working capital and their inventory how they had probably pre-COVID. Maybe not so just in time. There'll be a little reservation about, I need a little extra just to protect the customer and our customer service levels. But certainly not the level of inventories people have been carrying for the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch because, as a service provider to the manufacturing supply chain, companies like Champion are my customers. And so it's been interesting to watch my customers. Some are, like Jason said, getting back to normal, and then others are still wrestling to try to get material. They can't obtain certain material types. And it's because the mill has now decided that, hey, I need to have a minimum run to go ahead and run this material, and this smaller company can't justify purchasing a full mill run, or if they do, it has significant cost impact to their product. And so in order to get these programs right-sized, supply chains are going to have to come together and really look at these challenges from a realistic perspective so that we can dig in and find ways through. But I think that's I think like Jason said, we're all feeling the constraint of those, whether it's inflationary pressures on the business or whatever it is. We got to get back to doing business in a way that makes more sense rather than just in case, so that we can sustain the growth that we see in front of us. So that's, I think, what we're going to be all challenged with as we move forward, for sure.
Well, to sustain that growth and to meet these obstacles that we just talked about, what are some of the things that your companies are doing right now to kind of meet those challenges, whether it's capital investment or introduction of new technology, getting creative. We've talked about workforce challenges, getting creative about how we bring on a workforce, how we train a workforce. What are some things that you're going to do in 2024, maybe even beyond, and maybe even beyond your company too? Other things that you're seeing in the industry that you think we need to be ready for?
Well, I think, one thing that we've all done, all of us together with the SC Aerospace initiatives, have been just trying to get that next generation of workforce, right? There's no magic bullet. We really have to raise up that workforce. And so we've been working as a collective group on just raising the awareness of aerospace and defense manufacturing jobs being not this dark, dirty future, that it has a real potential to be a career for young people. And so that's the long range, right? There's pieces that we have to work at every day to get there at some point. So I think we continue those things. But, I'll speak, and I'll probably let Jason speak, because there's some interesting differences between us when we start talking about this, right? Because as a provider of a service and not a product, it's very difficult for me to make true investment in automation or things of that nature. And so what we are really working with is trying to, again, take an atmosphere in business that has, I think, intentionally been made a bit more cold, and there's not as many relationships. We're trying to build those relationships with our customers and find ways to win commitments so that we can have some cover as we look to make investment. Because many times we can end up being, you don't like to reference yourself this way, but we're a job shop, and we partner with people to go ahead and provide a service. And so really what we need to be able to make good capital investment in support for our teams and to streamline our processes is to know that business will be there for a period of time. And that's a very difficult thing to do now. I think, we've talked already about, some of the rebound in travel, commercial travel. The questions are, is this revenge travel, right? After being, confined and not able to travel for 2 years, is that going to, stop? Are we going to see that continue or not? I think the defense business is going to be something that unfortunately is going to be here for a while. I think everyone feels like they need to ramp up, and because deliveries are so extended for these units, it's going to be a while before the supply chain can deliver what's being requested. But that's a little bit of the look for us as to what it looks like, what we think it'll look like.
Sure. Jason?
Yeah, like Steve said, I think for any business, what makes the business is the people and the relationships. And the relationships being your supplier relationships of who you rely on every day. At the end of the day, as a manufacturer, we're only as good as our worst supplier. So what we have been doing is, where we have a problem, if there's a problem supplier, that's where we invest. And we've been insourcing a lot more work. So we've been investing in capital machining equipment, for example. If we have repeat on-time delivery issues on certain products, we'll say, hey, what's the business case to go and buy the machining equipment to do that ourselves? Because if we control it, we know we can support our needs, satisfy our customers. So we've done a lot of that, of insourcing products, as well as overall investment in capital equipment, mostly around robotics and automation, just to be able to kind of handle the ramp and as well as improve quality with a consistent, automated approach. So it's, that's been a long road for us. We've been doing that for over a decade, but more and more investment, I would say, in automation, which historically is a challenge for aerospace because, as Steve said, we're, for the most part, a job shop, all of us, because there's, the challenge with aerospace is high mix. There's not high volume on any one part for the most part. So you're making small lots of a lot of different part numbers, which is hard for automation. It's not automotive where you're pumping out millions of parts. For us, a lot is, 1,000 or a couple thousand. So that's a hard thing to automate, the variation of those products. But the cost of automation is really coming down, allowing for business cases in things like cobots and other automated equipment that does justify the investment. And most of our folks on the shop floor really appreciate, I always get that question, do people get upset when you bring in a robot to do their job? I think most folks appreciate the work that the automation of robots do, because it's the monotonous, tedious stuff of doing the same thing over and over that no one wants to do. So it's kind of fun. Most of our robots have names that the employees give the robot a name, and it's just like a coworker on the shop floor that doesn't call in sick and is pretty steady Eddie.
Sure. No, it's it's no secret that South Carolina, particularly upstate, it has a strong automotive industry, and people are always amazed when they say to me when they go to an aerospace plant for the first time, if they have experience in automotive, to say, wow, it is a lot slower. It is very different. It's very difficult to automate a lot of what you're doing here because it's just not the mass-produced, 12,000 a day or whatever the rate is. And so it's good to hear that some of that cost for automation is coming down, and we hope to see more of that in the future. It's actually a good opportunity, if I can make a plug for our organization, for South Carolina Council on Competitiveness. That's why we have the SC Fraunhofer USA Alliance, is to help provide some of that funding for companies that are looking to research on how to automate, and not just for themselves, but to help to develop their suppliers. So, keep that in mind if you're watching, and we're happy to work with you to try to, provide that funding for that. Well, this has been a great discussion, and I really appreciate your inputs. I'll say, particularly, I think about this all the time when we talk about defense. I'm a veteran, and there's a lot of veterans in the industry, and while it's obviously there's the business side of it when it comes to defense, I think it's one of the things that I appreciate about the aerospace industry is that it is a noble industry, because you're providing a way for people to keep themselves safe, and I think that's something that the state of South Carolina particularly, and everybody in this supply chain for defense should be proud of, and something that I want to highlight. But with that, I'll leave it up to the two of you to give us your last thoughts for 2024.
Well, I think, we've talked about a lot of growth, right? And there's still things to sort out. But I think that ultimately, 2024, we're very positive, very bullish with what's going on. There's a lot of investment that's being made at solar across our businesses, not just in South Carolina, but at every one of our facilities. And we're excited. We believe that the aerospace, defense, space markets are going to be strong. I know there's a lot of question out there with what markets are going to be there. Is the recession that was projected for 2023 finally going to reach us in 2024? Minus anything popping up, it looks like our markets that we serve are going to stay strong. We're excited about that. And I think our people are excited about that. And so we are eager to work with our customers to find solutions to the challenges that are there, because I think when we do that, then we all benefit.
Sure. Jason, last
just
word.
To touch on your last comment just about supporting the warfighter, I know that's something I personally take a lot of pride in, as well as all of our employees, that really all of our, especially airmen for us, since we're supporting aircraft for the most part, but also we support tank ignition systems as well. All those aircraft couldn't get off the ground without us right here in Liberty, South Carolina. So that's something we reinforce a lot. The importance of the quality and delivery of our products to the U.S. government is, our airmen, our country is relying on us, and that's just a fun thing to be part of, and something we should be proud of as an industry. As far as 2024, I think we touched a lot on supply chain, but on the labor side, there is a lot of good work, I think, that we collectively do through SC Aerospace, and we've seen some improvement, I think, in aerospace programs within the state. I know we have co-op programs with Clemson for engineering, with Greenville Tech, and with Tri-County Tech. I think we have 7 or 8 co-ops on board now for engineering, for purchasing, for IT, as well as electronic assembly, welding, machining. So a lot of those skills and trades, some of what Steve was touching on earlier, the more we can reinforce to young people today that you have a lifelong career, a high-paying career in manufacturing, in aerospace, that'll take you, wherever you want to go in the world, with high demand and high pay, the better for the industry, because there's no slowing down for the industry. It's going to keep climbing. And we need the trained people that want to join the industry to grow with us, really. So it's on all of us to get out there and sell the opportunity within the aerospace industry for all young people, and to the parents of young people that can promote these type of jobs, because like Steve said, it's not dirty manufacturing. These are high-tech manufacturing jobs.
Yeah, we need parents looking at their children and seeing those skill sets, right?
Sure.
And identifying those people or those children that are going to become adults and thrive in that environment.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you again to Steve Towns and Dave Edwards for joining us last week. It's been a good couple of discussions here, and I am very excited about where we can go in aerospace in 2024 and beyond. And I hope to see some of you watching at some of our events we have coming up. We'll have SC Tech Talk in North Charleston in the beginning of April, and then we'll have SC Aerospace Night with the Greenville Drive here in Greenville in May. And with that, thanks.